vacant seats. If you have not registered, please take time to register as you leave, okay? A few administrative matters first. In case of an emergency, we have exits here that most people came in, as well as in the front of the church. The restrooms are located behind me down the corridor, okay? Please remember, we are guests of the church, and smoking is not allowed on church property. And where is our good reverend? Here you go. Okay, good. Let me introduce Reverend Christine Dyke, the lead minister of the First Parish of Gorham, who will welcome us to the First Parish.
Thank you, and thank you for being here tonight. We do welcome you as First Parish Church. Our mission is to explore beliefs, act inclusively, and create community. And you are a part of doing that now. And that's why we use our building. We say yes to groups like Indivisible, because this is part of creating community and actually exploring a lot of things that we believe. So we're glad to have you here tonight. I'm going to go over how we act while we're here, and then I'll tell you how I act in other spaces. But we ask that everyone be civil in their comments and conversation and questions. We will have a Q&A time, and we ask that they actually be questions. So no grandstanding, no long speeches, okay? Make it a question. We will bring microphones into the top of the aisles here, and then you can line up in the aisles for your turns to ask questions. If someone gets out of hand, the first thing we do, if you're at a microphone, we'll just turn off your microphone, and then you'll get a visit from me. And this is private property, so I can escort you off the property. And as I know very well now, if you choose not to leave, we will have someone come and escort you off the property. So that's what we'll do, but I'll take care of that. And hopefully we're all here to do good things and hear good things together and work together. So they also asked me to tell you a little about how I and about 30 other people acted a few weeks ago. Maybe you saw it in the press, maybe. Yeah. So we knew it was a crunch time, as many of you know now. Up till about a week or so ago, we have been hosting 4 immigrant families, asylum-seeking families here in the church. And we've had about 25 families over the last 2 years in transitional housing. Our transitional housing is now empty because the border was closed a year ago, and visas to about 70 countries were also cut off not that long ago. So there are no new families coming in. And our work is also, and the organizations we work with, is the families that are in apartments now to keep them there. We don't want them back into transitional housing. We're working now for housing stability and make everybody stay there. But that's been an important part of our work here as a congregation, is supporting these families as they come to seek asylum, because so many of them have seen so much trauma and they need a safe place to be. And who are we to say no to that? And so between what ICE was doing, as you know, it's been a difficult 3 weeks, hasn't it? It really is. And our guards can't be completely down. You know, we heard the farm in Skowhegan, we heard what's going on in Bath and Brunswick, things are still going on places. But we as a group of people of faith, and all different kinds of faith, let me tell you, everything, which was fabulous, decided that we needed to go and speak with Senator Collins because of her power as the head of appropriations in the Senate. And we wanted an answer from her. We wanted to know, we didn't just want to speak to someone into the void. We wanted an answer from her. So about 30 of us showed up at her office a few weeks ago, and we stayed. And we did get to go in and talk to a staffer, and that was not successful. But we did that. I was a part of that. It was myself and another minister who did that. And then we waited. And our approach was, we will leave when she responds to us. Because these are important times and these are crunch times. This is something that can't wait 3 or 4 months. It's got to, and one of them was separating the DHS funding, of course, on that. So it came a time when the Collins offices wanted us off, and because it's private property, a privately held building, They wanted us off the property too. And most did, 9 of us chose to stay. And I have to say that the Portland Police Department was very kind and civil to us. But they were there to arrest us, and arrest us they did. So, as we say, we got to ride in a paddy wagon, something I hadn't done before, yep. And I've never gone in the back end of a jail. I've always gone in the front end of a jail. But I got to go through the back end this time. And so we were arrested and charged, and, fingerprints, the whole thing, mug shots, we got it all, and we got to stay in a holding cell. I say to people, the mistake they made is they put 5 women together in a holding cell. So it was 4 or 5 hours. We know each other really well now, really well. And then there were 4 gentlemen too, and they were together also in a cell. But we were let out. It was $500, but we didn't have to pay anything to get out except to the bond commissioner to do the paperwork. And we were released. And so a week from tomorrow, we have the initial hearing on what's going to happen, and we find out our charges and if they're going forward at anything. But we're going forward as a group together. Because we thought this was an important witness, and that attention needed to be made and taken at this point. And we're appreciative to the media that showed up. We had quite a bit of media there, and we were glad so we weren't, again, shouting into the dark, that people heard. And so we did some courage, took some courage to do some things, but we were glad to do it on the behalf of many, many people, some who cannot do that. Somebody said, "Why did you do it?" I said, "I don't have kids at home. It's okay. It's okay. And my job is not going to fire me if I end up in jail for a good reason." So I can, as my members here laugh and go, "Well, maybe, Christine." But that's... Yeah, that's right. No, I'm not. Yeah. But that's important, that sometimes some of us have to do things on behalf of you all because it's not safe for other people to do that. We thought about that. We could do it because we were all citizens and we were all white. And that is pathetic to be able to say that, but it's the reality. So then some of us who have the privilege have to take more of the risk. And, we have a Bible verse that says, "To whom much is given, much will be expected." And I take that seriously. I know how much I've been given in this life. Nothing I've done, and I've still gotten that. And so much is expected. And so I can't always say no, and I prefer to say yes. So that's what we're going to do going forward. It might take a while, but we will get this resolved one way or another. We kind of laugh that one of the options is that they may assign us to community service. And my 82-year-old mother said, "What do you do that isn't community service, Christine?" Said, "Well, it appears I might have to do more. Who knows?" So, but that's where we are, and we consider it, indeed, that's the community service that we did, all right, already here. So, yeah. But thank you so much. Many of you who I don't know, I got emails, I got texts when I got out of jail. I had 143 notifications, and they were a lot of them for people I didn't know. They just found me, my inbox at church. People found that and said thank you. So I won't tell you what most people said, because I can't even say it from the pulpit. It was so much fun. But one song that we sang there, as many of you know, when I gather with Indivisible, I'm usually the song leader. But one song that we sang there, and we continue to sing on Wednesdays when we have a prayer vigil that we started at the jail and now is in downtown Portland across from the Portland Museum of Art, is a song that is from South Africa. And it goes, "Courage, my friend, you do not walk alone. We will walk with you and sing your spirit home." And think of everyone that was taken to prison in South Africa for no good reason. And this is what they would sing to them as they were going. And so we sang that, we've sung it together, and we're pleased to do that. So I'm going to teach it to you now. And I'm going to get out of here because I might blow it So I'm going to sing courage and you're going to sing courage. So you just echo, then my friend, then together we sing, you do not walk alone. And then we will walk with you, and then together we sing your spirit home. So I know I've got some people who know this, so sing this with me. So it goes.
Thank you, Reverend Dyke. A few initial comments. ICC, Individual Cumberland County, is a peaceful, patriotic movement. We expect everyone participating tonight to act with respect toward others, as well as being treated with respect. Now, all of us know there's a lot going on in America right now. Okay? We have a full agenda tonight. In order to stay on track, we ask everyone limit their comments or questions to 2 or 3 minutes. The microphones have been placed. Okay? We may need to pause the discussion on a given topic so that we remain on schedule and can address other topics. Members of ICC may be available afterwards to continue the discussion after our program ends. ICC is largely self-funding. We will be passing baskets later this evening. Please contribute what you can. ICC and its members are focusing on making a difference in Maine during these troubled times. Your contributions will help this group make an impact. Now, let's move on to the main event. One of the goals of ICC for 2026 was to advance free and fair, secure elections in Maine without fear or interference. One of the first questions that came from that, everyone thought that was a good goal. But what do we mean? What does that look like? What can ordinary people do? Because we're not here to talk or bloviate. We want to talk about what action items the people here today can do to bring this about. Okay? So we're very fortunate tonight because free and fair elections is a hot topic at the moment. You have Steve Bannon talking about ICE being outside of polling places. You have all this stuff going on. And so we're very fortunate because we have 3 individuals. We have Beth Allen, who's the co-director of the Maine Voices Network, will be here. She's an activist. We have Patty Dubois, who is a member of the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections that bring together local election officials and law enforcement to ensure that safe and secure elections occur. So we're talking about an activist, and now we're talking about the town clerk level. Okay? We also are very, it's wonderful that Shenna Bellows has taken some time from her busy schedule. She's the current Secretary of State of this state. And once again, these 3 individuals are like the Marines. They're our front line. Okay? Because...
Don't remind me.
And so what we hope to get from this is, what can we do to have fair and free elections in Maine so we have perspectives from an activist, the town clerk who runs the elections, and the Secretary of State. So we get the 3 levels of government. in Maine to have a discussion tonight. Okay, we're going to start off with Beth Allen. If you please come up.
Absolutely. Hello. All right, I've been told the microphone is not magic and I have to move it closer. We good? Thank you for inviting me here. I don't know where the minister went. I do volunteer at a very lovely animal shelter if you're looking for some community service opportunities. Highly recommend. So as it was said, my name is Beth Allen. I am a co-executive director of Maine Votes and Maine Voices Network. And before you all start pulling out your phone to be like, what is that? Don't worry about it. I am actually here tonight in my capacity as part of Maine Votes and Maine Voices Network. We organize a coalition called Mainers for Modern Elections. And it is my, sometimes like herding cats, volunteering at that shelter, it really helps. I bring together the coalition of about 28 different organizations that work right here in Maine from a variety of different areas, from reproductive health to environmental justice, racial equity organizations. They all come together once a month and we talk about free and fair elections, pro-voter policies that we can work on collectively together. This is a coalition that was formed in 2020. We just joked, remember when we had a lovely election that needed to happen during a global pandemic? It was easy. We had these organizations that knew things needed to shift. There was going to need quick response. We needed to be able to work and support town clerks who were going to be in charge of their municipalities for elections and election administration. We had to work with secretaries of state office and the policies that needed to come into place to ensure that that safe and secure election could take place and that folks could feel safe and secure in casting their ballots. So it was back then that we formed, and out of that work, we began doing some state-level policy advocacy together. Since that time, that organization, that coalition, has helped to support the rollout of online voter registration, so you can register online. An easy, simple process and secure process to be able to register. Automatic voter registration, if anyone has gone in recently to register your car, update something at the DMV, when you walk in, you get prompted to, if you're registered to vote, and it makes this process simpler for folks. All in these processes that are just about making sure that there are secure ways for folks to be able to engage in the election process. And that's the work we've continued to do. Some of you may remember a couple months ago, there was this little ballot measure called voter ID that folks were out there. I know the Indivisible group, I think that was probably the last time I was in front of the giant Indivisible group in Cumberland County, was talking about Save Maine absentee voting. It was the Mainers for Modern Elections coalition that kind of anchored that work early on in the process because we kind of saw that coming. We're like, uh-oh, where is this? This is an attempt to, suppress voters, make it harder for folks to be able to cast their ballot, and really was part of this bigger narrative that we've continued to see that our elections are not secure. And I want to be really clear. I know we're going to talk about some of the things tonight about how do we make sure this coming election remains secure. But I want us to all remember that when we're going out and we're talking about some of these things, which are real, and we need to be talking about them and thinking about these next steps, Maine has an incredibly safe, secure, and transparent process with checks and balances along the way that allows folks to be able to cast their ballot with confidence that their ballot is going to be counted, that they are going to have access to being able to vote, and without having to jump through unnecessary hoops. And yes, this year, it means we're starting to talk about how do we make sure that remains in place here in Maine, because we know it works, and voters know it works. Voters said that just this past year, said, no, we're not messing with our election. That's why overwhelmingly voters defeated that voter suppression effort just back in November. So yes, we should all applaud you all helping that immensely. I'm going to give you just a couple of things that I know that we are watching here or in the Mainers for Modern Elections space coalition. And I'm going to look at my notes because I'll forget something. So let me start with kind of in-state stuff. So one thing that we have been working on, which folks may have seen, we've popped a little bit of news this week, is ranked choice voting. So folks may have seen that just this week the legislature has passed a bill that will expand ranked choice voting to the general election for state house, state senate, and gubernatorial election. Something, by the way, that was passed by voters at the ballot box many years ago. It is now that has gone past. I want to correct a few misinfo pieces that are out there. So this is not something that Democrats are working around the system. This is something that was passed, that voters supported at the ballot box many years ago and has been held up. So this is the legislature trying to correct that, put that forward. And yes, they also requested what's called a solemn occasion. Also, that is as lawyery as I get, so don't ask me beyond that. They have asked the courts to say, hey, we've heard from some folks that they think that this doesn't connect with the Maine state constitution. We want the court to give us an opinion on that. We want you to weigh in because this is important, and we want folks to be able to feel confident moving forward that the system remains secure and fair. So they have asked for that. That is something that can come out right through the legislature, and now it is in the hands of the courts. The courts will weigh in, they will provide their opinion. We have seen nationally that these ranked choice voting policies have been held up by courts, even ones with very similar state constitutions, including in Alaska, just in the last year or two. So that's been something that we've been really focused on. That is a huge priority that has been lifted off, and now we leave it for the courts to do their work as well. The other piece that we have been working on in the state legislature as a policy this year that I would just raise up for folks is around funding. So everyone gets into oh man, the budget's coming. The budget fights are always fun up at the legislature. But one of the things that we collectively do as a coalition, not just about them going, the organizations saying, here's the funding that we need for our own priorities and that they need in social, environmental justice work and those things, but they actually come together and say, hey, we need to make sure that our election administration is well funded and has the resources to do the important work of administering the election. Shenna can correct me, but I think there have been times we've actually had to advocate fairly fiercely to make sure that ballot printing money was in the budget. That seems like a no-brainer. But we like to have the administration's back on these ones. So we'll be looking about making sure that the costs of administering the elections are covered in the budget this year. And that means making sure that they have the right equipment, new and improved and important equipment that the election administration needs to be able to, again, administer that safe and secure election. That's where we've kind of focused on the state level, just to give you a little taste. What I do want to really kind of end with, which is not the fun part, but it is the federal administration work coming in and having an impact on our safe, secure elections here in Maine. How many folks have already heard about the SAVE Act? Right. So we've heard that, yep. Yeah, it was really I really hated that they used the SAVE Act because then it was Save Maine Absentee Voting. I felt like they were going to try to steal our messaging, but it's okay. We persevered over that. Well, there's a new threat out there. So the SAVE Act 1 is still there, but because I know most of you have probably already heard that, there's also a new kind of threat that is coming through the federal administration, which they have given one of their fun little names called the MEGA Act, as they are calling it. So the Make Elections Great Again. Right. So a couple of things. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's in it. I'm also going to tell you that as you leave, there's some handouts that will give you more information and like be able to look at. So if you are a visual person, please feel free to pick those up. So first, I want to just say that some of the stuff that is part of the Mega Act are absolutely things that Mainers just voted on to say we don't want these things that will interfere with our ability to be able to cast our safe, secure ballot from home, be able to use a drop box, be able to mail our ballots back. All of these important pieces that make voting accessible while remaining secure. And this, what is included in the Mega Act is requirements for proof of citizenship. So we've seen this before. It will require photo identification in that. It will interrupt and conflict with our ability to maintain our safe, secure absentee voting program. It will impact seniors, as we talked about during Save Maine absentee voting, and being able to cast their ballots in that safe, secure way. Same thing, it's going to impact working Mainers who are dependent upon being able to use their Dropbox because they are busy and can't get to town office when they are open, and you want to be able to use that safe, secure Dropbox location. So on top of proof of citizenship with a photo ID, it also makes adjustments to mail balloting, adding a lot of restrictions to mail balloting, some of which are not in conflict with actually the safe and secure process we already have here in Maine, but many of them would. That number one thing being the photo ID component to this piece that would make things much harder. There are much more practical ways to engage in safe, secure elections work. We know that here in Maine because we've been doing it. We've been, over the last 10 plus years, advancing policies such as ongoing absentee voting, such as absentee voter registration on same-day voter registration. These are all processes that have checks and balances, safe and secure, and allow, again, it comes back to allowing folks to be able to access their right to vote without having to go through unnecessary hoops. The Mega Act is all about voter suppression. We should be talking about it as Mainers. So I will give you one kind of quick call to action. One, please, please, please start talking about this with folks. Let folks know that this is a terrible piece. And remember the way that we talked about absentee voting in the Save Maine absentee voting campaign. We didn't talk necessarily about the photo ID component of that piece. That wasn't the first thing wasn't on our yard signs. It wasn't on those pieces. It was about the absentee voting pieces. And it's really important that we continue to actually say that as Mainers who just voted, again, overwhelmingly to defeat those attacks. They're coming now from a federal level. So letters to the editor that say, Mainers already said we don't want this, we don't need this, our elections are safe and secure. And then calls to Senator Collins and to Senator King to object and to not support this Mega Act as it makes its way through the legislature. So I think that's my time.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Next person up is Patty Dubois. Am I saying your name close?
That's fine.
Okay. Here you go.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here. I'm happy to speak anytime anyone is willing to listen about elections. I was telling the nice pastor that I have to learn to say no, that it's a complete sentence, because I just don't say no. And so here I am, an hour and a half drive, and I'm happy to be here. Yeah, thank you. It wasn't snowing, it's fine. I just want it noted that I haven't been arrested or in jail recently, so I'm just, I just want to make note of that for the record. So I've been a city clerk for 25 years. I've been administering elections during that period. I'm just one of 500 clerks in the state of Maine that administer elections. The smallest community, I think, has 2 registered voters, Glenwood Plantation, and the city of Waterville has about 12,000 registered voters. So I have quite a bit of experience with administering elections here in the state. I've worked closely with the Secretary of State's office. They do a fantastic job there. They're up against deadlines constantly, and I'm not sure how they do it, but they do. And I'm also very active in an affiliate group of clerks called the Maine Towns and City Clerks Association. We're a group of 750 or so members of clerks and deputy clerks, and we conduct training, peer training for our membership. So I am a clerk instructor of Title 21A, and in partnership with the Secretary of State's office, we go around the state and we conduct state elections training. It's a full-day training. We do it once or twice a year. I also administer voter registration. I'm the registrar of voters in Waterville, so I administer voter registration for my citizens. I have 2 colleges in town, so that's usually quite busy. And I also conduct, and I'm an instructor for voter registration in partnership with the Secretary of State's office. So I go around the state. We went out to the county this year. We promised to go to Aroostook County every 2 years to provide training to our members, because we have a very large state and it's difficult for them to get to training. And we also have another elections class for clerks that is Title 30A, which is local elections. So for municipalities that, like cities often have a city charter, which is like a set of bylaws that dictate how they run their local elections. A lot of smaller communities and plantations that don't have charters and run their communities by town meeting style elections, that is administered through Title 30A. So I also help out and teach that class as well. In addition to those activities, I am the chair of the Legislative Policy Committee for the Maine Towns and City Clerks Association. So we monitor bills that are coming out, and we testify before the legislature on how these bills will impact municipal clerks. We have a large committee of about 12 members that represent very small communities and very large communities, and also communities around the different geographic areas in the state, because we find that these bills impact communities differently, and we want to make sure that we have the nuance of how it impacts all 750 members so that we can translate that into testimony before the legislature. We oftentimes will share our testimony with the Secretary of State's office. It's, sometimes we don't want to come out strong on a bill because we don't want to appear that we are not willing to administer a law if it's passed. Ultimately, whatever laws are passed, we will administer those laws, whether we agree with them or not. So, my saying when I do trainings to clerks is, we follow all the laws, even the dumb ones. And, it's not whether we agree or disagree with them. And if we, kind of joke with some members of the community that maybe don't agree with the law, we can, I tell them, feel free to use that. You can quote me if you'd like. Maybe we agree or disagree, but we have to follow all the laws. So, as chair of the Legislative Policy Committee for the Maine Towns and City Clerks, after the 2020 election, there were some clerks in the state of Maine that were threatened. And it's a very difficult position for those clerks to be in. And you're really being threatened as, not as a compromise, and we need to get something passed, and so we did. So what ended up getting passed was a bill that put election threats into Title 21A, which is where all the election laws are located, rather than have it buried in the criminal code somewhere. We also required the Secretary of State's office to conduct de-escalation training of the clerks, because we find ourselves in kind of uncharted territory now when we're dealing with people that are so, on the fringe on either side, and we're trying to, with Switzerland in the middle, and we're trying to just, administer the law and get home at night to see our families. The other piece of the bill that was passed was to require threat reporting to the Secretary of State's office, some kind of a process by which clerks could submit a threat report to the Secretary of State's office, because what we found during, this process of trying to get this bill passed was that if these clerks hadn't come forward, no one would even know that these threats ever took place. And so we're trying to gather data in order to bring that information to the legislature, possibly in the future, to even, go to the next level and raise the protection for election officials. But without the data, that just doesn't happen. So we've been working on that. I've worked closely with Shenna to not only report, sometimes, these threats don't rise to the level of an arrest or a conviction, but it's no less impactful for the person that's on the receiving end. And we feel that even though it doesn't rise to the level, that information should be gathered as well. So we're working with the Secretary of State's office to, as like an addendum to the required reporting, the Secretary of State is required to report annually to the legislature on the number of threats that were received. And because there's zero that, convictions or charges filed, we aggregate the other data that, there were bomb threats at this place, that impacted absentee voting. There were, swatting activities that took place here that impacted absentee voting. The shootings that took place in Lewiston impacted absentee voting and possibly election day voting. So there's other things that actually impact us that don't necessarily reach the level of a threat to an individual. So we've worked closely with them, and we appreciate that. And we also are hoping at some point that probably next legislative session, or maybe even this legislative session, I'll let Shenna defer to that, we're hoping to make those threat reporting forms confidential, because some clerks don't want to come forward with a threat report because that may put them in further jeopardy. So by making that information confidential, we feel that may result in more threats being reported. So because of my work on the Legislative Policy Committee, and we ended up being the first state in the country to actually get legislation passed at the state level to protect election officials. Woo! Thank you. It was very rewarding. I was, through that process, invited to join the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections. And as was mentioned, this is a nonpartisan group of election officials and law enforcement that are partnering together to try to strengthen those relationships to protect election officials and elections. So that's been a very rewarding experience. I've met people throughout the country that are way, just these super important people that I'm humbled to be in a room with all of them. And I'm just waiting for them to figure out, maybe we don't need to invite her anymore. But it's been a great resource for me. I've gone around the country to different locations and spoke about what we've found here in Maine and the successes that we've had, shared that information with fellow clerks across the country. We went to Maricopa County, Arizona. There's 1 million voters in that county. It was just, walking through the warehouses, and I was just blown away by the volume, but it's all very scalable. We all do the same thing, just different levels, different amount of staff. So that's been a great, rewarding experience, and I've met some great folks. And I also got the opportunity through that organization to go and speak with the federal attorney general in Washington, D.C., and explain the situation that we had here in Maine and how we had trouble collecting data because, we didn't have mechanisms in place. And it's the same challenge that they're finding at the federal level, that if they don't have data to support it, that they're not going to get strengthened legislation passed at the federal level. So, Podunk Patty is there in Washington, D.C., looking at, waiting outside in the halls at the, Attorney General's office. And I thought, what am I doing here? And I realized that, I come from a small community, but I represent those smaller communities, and I still have an important voice, and it can make a difference. So that was actually, instead of humbling, it was actually empowering for me, and I haven't stopped talking since. So. So if you have an opportunity to go on to the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections website, the committee has grown over time, and it provides resources to election officials and law enforcement, and it tries to raise awareness of how we can all work together to keep us all safe. So with that said, I'm happy to pass the mic over, and if anyone has any questions for me later, I'd be happy to do my best to answer.
I'm sure we're going to. Thank you very much. And for the last member of our panel, Shenna Bellows, who's the current Secretary of State for Maine.
So I just want to recognize the clerks are the front line of our elections, and they work incredibly hard, and Mainers should be so proud. We are one of the best states in the nation for voter participation. In 2022, we were #1. In 2024, Minnesota cheated and put Tim Walz on the ballot, so I had to send a box of Maine goods to Minnesota. But I just want to, let's give Patty a huge round of applause. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. You know, I think that the work of election officials at the state and local level has changed in a very, very short period of time. When I was sworn in 2 days before the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th. And so when Patty and the clerks came to me and started telling me about what some of the clerks were experiencing, constituent coming in with a heavy metal chain and whacking it on a clerk's desk, another clerk getting death threats, and not just for doing her job of administering a safe and secure election. I was really proud to partner with the clerks on this. So in that first year, we passed legislation and we started doing scenario planning, tabletop the vote exercises to get ready for 2022. And we scenario planned natural disasters, hurricanes, power outages, and we started scenario planning disruptions in the polling places, threats against election officials. And we had a great election in 2022 in terms of voter participation and voter turnout. Fast forward to 2024, and the misinformation, malinformation, and disinformation about elections was in a fever pitch, unfortunately. And Patty is a remarkable trainer. She is beloved by the clerks. When she does a road show with Deputy Secretary of State Julie Flynn, who's my Chief Elections Director, who's been doing it longer than anyone else in the country. She's been in charge of elections for 31 years in Maine. Yeah, she's amazing. When they go on the road to talk to clerks, it's like, I don't know, pick your favorite, Bad Bunny, your favorite rock star, whoever it is. So in 2024, we were looking at threats from foreign adversaries. The federal government was briefing us, giving us top secret briefings at the secretary level of the influence from Russia and China and Iran. And we were thinking through new threats. I had been swatted, doxed first, then swatted. And so we started scenario planning around potential swatting. What would happen if people called in? My mom's like, what's swatting? It's like, well, Mom, it's a fake call into law enforcement designed to elicit a SWAT team response where law enforcement comes in armed and ready to confront some sort of really dangerous situation. And so we did tabletop the vote, scenario planning around that. We also instituted in my first term law enforcement training to train law enforcement in the laws at the polling places, in the role of the clerks and the election wardens on election day, and how our elections work. And you know what? In 2024, on election day, 6 polling locations across the state that were co-located with schools were swatted. And voting was uninterrupted. It barely made the news, which is always a good thing. I have a pair of socks that says, I love boring elections. But we were ready. because we had planned for it. We were ready because we had imagined the worst, and we had trained our law enforcement partners, and we had protocols and procedures in place. So fast forward to 2025. Now in 2024, I also chaired a national, I don't know what it is about Mainers on national security working groups, but I chaired a national, federal, state, local collaboration of election officials and cybersecurity officials called, has a long boring name, the Election Infrastructure Information Sharing and Analysis Center, the EIISAC. But it was truly bipartisan. My vice chair was a Republican county official from Florida. There's one Democratic secretary, one Republican secretary, and so on down the line, keeping it truly nonpartisan. And on Valentine's Day, I remember this because my husband was making me dinner, I get a text message, our funding has been eliminated. The funding from the federal government for election security and cybersecurity to the states, millions of dollars, was eliminated with a stroke of a pen. So over the past year in 2025, we have been preparing to safeguard our cybersecurity and our election security on our own without any federal support. Then last summer, the Department of Justice went out to every state demanding the voter rolls from the state because they wanted to create a national voter database. I said, go jump in the Gulf of Maine. But my words were deliberate because you see in 2017, when the federal government had done the same thing, the Mississippi Secretary of State, a Republican, had said, go jump in the Gulf of Mexico. And not a single state had capitulated. But in 2025, it's been a different thing, huh? We've seen institutions, we've seen people who should know better caving. And so I really wanted to send a strong message to the rest of the country, to all my fellow secretaries, that we shouldn't back down. And I'm proud to say there are 27 states in our coalition of protecting American voter data, and includes Republican states like Utah and New Hampshire. And we've been winning in court. Just yesterday, we won a court victory because, of course, DOJ, they sued Maine first, probably because we were loudest. But they sued a couple dozen states, and we won in court in Michigan yesterday. We won in court in Oregon last week. We won in court in California the week before. And I think we're going to win in court when we go to court in Maine, in March, here in Maine. So, but this is, thank you. But this is truly unprecedented in terms of federal attempts to interfere in the elections. And so I want to sit down because I want to hear your questions. But I'm just going to say the last few weeks have been really startling. I was at a National Association of Secretaries of State meeting with my Republican and Democratic colleagues talking about how we prepare for 2026. And it was just on the heels of the grotesquely named Operation Catch of the Day here in Maine. And remember what happened on the Saturday night that Alex Preddy was murdered. Maybe you don't know this, but Pam Bondi, the Attorney General for the country, sent a letter to Minnesota saying ICE will leave if you do these things, including giving us the voter rolls. Nothing to do with immigration. And so we're at this conference, and Pam Bondi and Kristi Noem and Tulsi Gabbard say they want to be on the agenda. They sort of elbow their ways in. We're all sitting like you all are. The media's all there. We're just waiting. It's 3 o'clock. That's when they're scheduled to show. And they no-showed. But we found out that Tulsi Gabbard had been in Georgia, where they had seized the ballots and the ballot materials from 2020. And this is very unusual. In Maine, I sure hope all of the ballots from 2020 are gone, because we're on a 22-month retention schedule, and ballots get destroyed prior to the next federal election. Those ballots in Georgia, they were counted 3 times. They were investigated both by their legislature and by their Republican Secretary of State. There were numerous lawsuits, all of which Donald Trump lost. And so for the FBI and Tulsi Gabbard, who's the top spy official in the nation, she's the director of national intelligence, which means domestic spy operations, to be handling ballots, that's alarming in a democracy. So as we prepare for 2026, I know many of you are here. I want you to be reassured. We're going to have safe, free, and secure elections. We're going to beat Minnesota in turnout. Just saying. And it's going to be for 3 reasons. The strength of our Constitution, which places Article 1, Section 4, places the states, not the federal government, in charge of elections. The strength of our federal and our state laws that have been carefully crafted by Republicans, independents, and Democrats over decades that are very strong. The strength of our frontline election officials who obey all the laws, even the dumb ones. The strength of our activists, the coalition, who advocates for safe and secure and modern elections. And all of you voting and helping our friends and neighbors vote and having the best turnout ever. So that's my message of hope, but I'm happy to take your questions. I know we're going to have a really good conversation. And I just want to thank you because it's the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, right? 250 years ago, the framers said no kings. But they did so with a passion for what could be, right? Justice and liberty and freedom and the pursuit of happiness for all. And so that's what this is about. That's what voting is all about, is choosing our destiny, choosing who we'll be over the next 250 years. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have microphones here so people can ask direct questions to our panelists. One other thing, not only am I your humble moderator tonight, I am also the treasurer of individual Cumberland County. And I like to have the baskets passed. Okay, you know us treasurers, our cold cockles, hearts, and everything. So anyway, so if people would like to, line up and just please, one at a time, we'll just go back and forth and you can address your questions to specific people or to the panel in total. And again, please keep these are supposed to be questions, not statements, but questions, keep them to 2 or 3 minutes so that we have time for everyone to ask the questions they want and we have a good, robust discussion.
Please form a line along the outside walls, if you would, please. Thank you. That way you don't obstruct the view of everyone else.
Is this on? Yes, there we go. Hi, I'm Rachel Grady, and I just have a question, Shenna, primarily I think for you, but I'm curious about LD 2106, the upcoming legislation by Ellie Sato, who's an amazing representative from Gorham, actually, and the idea of having election integrity and protection around the amendment that has been added. I've been looking that up online and I'm having trouble finding a lot of information about that. I think the focus right now on the actual proposed legislation is really around protections around schools, hospitals, libraries, and I think quick cares maybe, or daycare centers. But then the amendment that was added and was spoken about on Monday night by Jackie Sartoris mentioned that this would also be something that would protect the polls. So I don't know more than that, and I wondered if you wanted to share anything about that or point me in a direction to learn more.
So, try again. Can you guys hear in the back? Oh, good. Okay. There we go. Okay. Let's try that. Can you hear me? Yes. Great. So first, let me just thank you for the question, and thank you. Let me just say Gorham is sending the best people. I see Senator Tim Nangle in the back. He's remarkable, and Representative Ellie Sato is really just a force, a really positive force for good. So I do think it's important to block ICE from entering certain spaces, to have safe places in our communities. I will say that we believe strongly that current law, federal law, prohibits any armed federal officers from entering the polling places, period. And so that is already federal law, well-established federal law. And furthermore, in discussing with the Office of the Attorney General the protections at the state level, in our polling places, it is the election wardens who are in charge. And they decide whether law enforcement can come back behind the line into the voting place. And under the law, generally that is not permitted unless they are voting. Although again, the warden, and Patty can speak to this best because she is often a warden, really has that authority. And so it's always useful to increase protections, but we do think we have a strong, very strong legal standing, both at the federal and the state level, to safeguard against armed federal agents in polling places. I think the greater concern, what we saw with the recent ICE surge, was people, and I know many of you were involved in the mutual aid networks of support, we saw people afraid to go to work, afraid to go to school. Absenteeism in the greater Portland school districts was over 20%. We saw people afraid to go get groceries. And so my concern becomes, if you're afraid to go to work, you're going to be afraid to go to vote. And so then that's where our awesome absentee voting, protected by Maine Voices, Maine Votes, and constructed over years, we have 30 days of no excuse absentee voting. People can call their clerk and get their ballot. They can go online and request it and have it mailed to them. They can make arrangements to get their ballot in other ways, or they could go in person to the clerk's office early. So I do think that vote by mail, voting early under no excuse absentee voting are going to be other important safeguards. And I do think, we are talking with the other secretaries. I do think that there's a role for an affirmative legal strategy as well. And I just want all of you to know we're thinking about this and we're going to be ready for it. And Patty, do you want to speak to the role of the warden?
Could I ask what that LD number is? Thank you. I wrote it down, but I wanted to make sure it was correct. I'll try to follow up on that to see what that amendment is. So at the polling place, as Shenna mentioned, the warden is in charge on election day. I take a backseat role, if you will. I kind of run back and forth between City Hall and the polling place, run materials, whatever. And honestly, it's really stressful for me to be there on election day because everyone turns their questions to me, and I try to deflect them back to the warden. I will say that we always have uniformed police officers at the polls in Waterville. We've done it for years. I think it just lends an air of security to the process. Not all communities feel that way. We find that some communities say, oh boy, if you put an armed officer there, people aren't going to want to show up. So it really depends on the situation in each community, and we let people make those decisions. We do allow our officer to, we consider him a staff, if you will, to be behind the guardrail area. He is in uniform. It's very secure. He'll come ask questions of the warden if there is something happening outside or whatnot. He'll come in and just check with the warden, who's been doing it in Waterville for 38 years. I hope he doesn't retire before I do. But he does a great job. So we work it out, but every community is a little bit different.
Hi, my name is Jen Boggs. I live in Portland, and I just wanted to say thank you so much to Indivisible for putting this evening together. It's been so fascinating to learn all this. And thank you, Patty, for making the ride. And I love that you are and your team are following the law. It's so refreshing. So thank you. This is the first time I've really seriously thought about, and I'm going to work a poll and or monitor. So I wanted to get your opinions, your insights on the June election and the November election. How soon should we be doing this? How soon should I be inviting friends over to sign up, learn about it and sign up? And what's the difference between the two? And is there a greater need for poll workers and monitors? Thank you.
That's my wheelhouse. Reach out soon to your local clerk. Let them know that you're interested in working. we have to balance the parties between Democrats and Republicans without more than one invariance. So some communities have a harder time getting one or the other. And so we try to balance that out. Initially, it's kind of a steep learning curve. There's more to it than you would think. Years ago, the women would sit and knit and share recipes and whatever, and everything was great. It was a polling place on every corner, basically. Now we have one polling place for our 12,000 voters. So it's a production line, And I tell people that are working, I want 60 voters through this line an hour. There's no chit chat, and I don't know why they come back. Honestly, it's because I'm funny and I wear cute shoes. But other than that, that's about all I've got. But we really need people. We need younger people because our election officials are aging out. They've been doing it for 40 or so years, and over time, their abilities become more limited. Maybe they can't stand for hours, they can't see as well, they can't hear. So we have to kind of put them in different roles than what maybe they've done over the years. In Waterville, we work really closely with the civics teacher at the high school. She's also the NHS director. And she solicits students and lets them know that there's a need, get civically involved. And I've had such a fantastic experience using these young kids. I mean, they're 16, 17 years old, but I feel like I'm putting the line out and I'm catching them and I'm snagging them, and they're going to be there every year. They love it, and they really feel part of something. And so I basically partner them with a more experienced worker, so they kind of sit behind and watch the process. And then after an hour or so, if they feel comfortable, we swap seats, and then the experienced worker kind of monitors them, and they become experts quickly, and they're young, and I kind of make a joke like, you're young, get down, get on the ground, move that cord, and they laugh and they think I'm funny, but we really need some of those younger people. But many hands make light work. So the more people that can come forward, the better. I will say that if you want to be a monitor, make sure that you understand what your role is. A lot of times people will show up at the polls and say, yeah, I'm here to, do whatever. And we're like, well, what is it? Well, I guess I'm just watching today. And they don't even know what it is that they're supposed to be doing, what they're allowed to do or not allowed to do. So it's helpful if you're a part of an association or your organization to kind of inform those poll watchers what it is exactly that they are responsible for and what they're doing.
I'll just add a plug and say, yes, go do all the things that Patty just said. And also I'll put in the plug too, that if you want to be an election observer, this was supposed to be my call to action at the very end, so we're just getting to it early. Thanks for the question. The League of Women Voters is prepping up now, knowing that they want to double the amount of election observers that they've had in terms of their volunteers. They are nonpartisan. They want to be able to just have folks out there. They want folks to feel the safe and security of when they go out to their polling locations. So they're looking for volunteers. They are planning to do this through the primary in June as a great practice run, prepping up to even build their infrastructure into November. So they are already doing trainings for election observers and getting folks plugged in so that they can feel confident when they get there. So.
And I would just add, in terms of the primary versus general, we always need people in the off year and in the primaries. So please volunteer now, not just as training, but because we have to do all of the same things in the primary that we do. And just to reassure folks, so the Secretary of State's office is, I'm the chief election official for the state. Our civil service, our state team, they have a hub in Augusta. They're answering calls from the clerks all day, working to make sure that the whole state is running smoothly. We also have an emergency operations center with Maine Emergency Management, with law enforcement, with my office, with my director of cybersecurity and infrastructure security. Traditionally, with some of our federal partners, for example, the FBI in the past, and we're watching to make sure, like when the swatting happened, or there was another election year where there was an individual who made some threats online about, potentially, he was an armchair warrior. He didn't have a car, he didn't have a firearm, but he said he was going to go shoot a polling place. So we made sure that he didn't, that he was doing okay and that the polling place was protected. So we have an emergency operations center. We have the civil side with all the elections officials fielding calls from clerks all day. And we have protocols so that when the League of Women Voters, if an observer sees something that raises questions for them, they can talk to the clerk or the warden. But if the clerk or the warden's really busy, or if they're really concerned, if they think that the clerk, maybe it's a new clerk, it's never Patty, but maybe it's a new clerk, got something a little bit wrong, they call the league, the leads that the league has identified, and they have a direct line to my office, and then we can resolve those situations. So for example, there was a new clerk that put up a poster that said, you need your voter ID to vote. We immediately got a call from the league. She had used AI. And it turns out AI thought that you needed a voter ID. We're like, no, please just use the posters that we send you. And she took it down and she's mortified. So usually it's something fairly benign. I've never encountered it to be malice. I will say, speaking of primaries, I know a lot of candidates right now are collecting signatures and QCs. So you should participate in democracy on all sides of the aisle and do that as well.
Okay. Here.
Hi, Phil Hammett, and I want to thank you first of all for your diligence and tenacity, and consequently, I feel pretty good about Maine elections. I'm a little concerned about the national elections, and the first thing I wanted to ask is, if Trump does pull the Insurrection Act and cancel elections, can Democratic states still hold their elections since they're in control?
Trump can't cancel elections. He doesn't get to do that.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So I understand the legal theories. I understand the threats, and I don't take what he says lightly. I've been on MS now, I think 5 times in the last week, talking about some of the rhetoric around nationalizing elections and some of the concerns that I have about what the White House is saying. But I do think that there are real things that we may see in terms of federal interference, and that's what other secretaries, Republican secretaries and Democrats are fighting back against. But we are going to have elections. We are going to have elections.
Right.
We will make it so.
Okay. Bringing back the SAVE Act, which was mentioned earlier. At one point, I know part of it was you had to show your birth certificate, and the birth certificate had to match your ID, and that seemed like a blatant attempt to keep women from voting. Yeah. And I was wondering what happened with that.
So that is definitely, so the SAVE Act, it requires documentary proof of citizenship. And of course, only citizens should be able to vote, right? We can all agree that citizens are voting in the federal elections for president and Congress. And the truth is that's what's happening. The SAVE Act would require that everyone at the point of registration demonstrate their proof of citizenship. So for folks, that would be a certified birth certificate. For most people, it would be a certified birth certificate. For you or me, probably. Mm-hmm. But if you've changed your name, if you are like 85% of married women and you've changed your name, then your birth certificate won't be enough. The clerks will need to see your marriage certificate. And if you've been married and divorced, maybe you got rid of the marriage certificate because it's a bad memory, but you kept the name because your kids had it. Or maybe you've been married and divorced and married and divorced and you've changed your name a few times. Then suddenly it becomes a really big deal to get all the documentation that you need to suddenly be able to exercise your right to vote. And I know this because I run the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, and we see it with the Real ID. And only about 40% of Mainers have the Real ID, but we know from those experiences that the people that have the hardest time getting the Real ID are older white women. For the most part, I say white because, well, it's all women, but naturalized citizens, new Mainers, guess what? They got their documents. It's not really hard for them. We have a real hard time sometimes with women or men from Aroostook County and Washington County if they're old enough that they were born across the border because the nearest hospital was in Canada, and then they come to try to prove their citizenship, and suddenly we have an immigration attorney, and she's like, I have to talk to you about your immigration status, and these folks are like, what? But the law requires that. So the SAVE Act is terrible. It's in the Senate. It passed the House. I don't think it's going to pass the Senate. There's a new, it's called Save America Act. They're like taking a second bite at the apple. I'm happy to say my office talked to Jared Golden's office today. Both Jared Golden and Shelley Pingree are opposing that, so that is good to see. And then there's the Mega Act, which again, it's hard to see these bills passing the Senate, but there's a razor thin margins. So, and unfortunately, with these bills, they're going to require immediate implementation. And that's going to be a challenge. Yeah.
Wow. Well, we're going to have our work cut out. Getting the word out on this.
Yes, if it happens, I promise you, we will be all over TV, radio, newspaper. I say we, it'll probably be the clerks or Julie, but we'll make sure that people know what's going on, and we'll have procedures. Election officials are the world's best contingency planners. I see this with our local clerks and with our state civil service every day. That's what they do. They're always thinking about, how do I make sure this works? What's the worst that could happen? What's going to go wrong? And how do I safeguard? That's what we already do. Unfortunately, some of the challenges coming at us are more complex and unprecedented.
I did some research on the national elections on 2024 and a little concerned about digital manipulation. I left you a copy of that.
Oh,
So-
and finally, one last thing. I am here to tell you the elections were safe and secure in every state. I know sometimes, given the rhetoric of folks on the other side of the aisle, that can raise concerns, but I really do believe in the processes, in the systems, in the laws, and in my meetings with secretaries of state across the aisle, behind closed doors, one of my Republican colleagues, they had some very spicy words to say about what is happening, perhaps spicier than I would say. And I think I do want people to recognize that across the country, even though over 95% of the ballots across the nation are paper ballots, those can get recounted. Almost every single state has post-election audits. We just implemented those in Maine thanks to the League of Women Voters and the Coalition for Secure and Modern Elections and my leadership. There are safeguards in every state. There really are.
Uh-huh. But,
Okay.
there are also,
Oh, we're going to go to the next person. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Maynard Sharon from Hollis. Kind of stole my thunder a little bit here, but it's the same topic. I'm feeling very good about state of Maine's legal and appropriate voting, but we do have 49 other states. Trump won the election in 6 states by 3% or less: Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. Georgia and Pennsylvania have Republican secretaries of state. So my question is, to bore down, you know a lot of these people well, I'm sure. Are you feeling like, particularly Georgia, if Trump's going to go after any states, wouldn't it be the states that where the election's close? He's not going to go after Massachusetts. Doesn't really need to, or Wyoming, but Georgia, Pennsylvania, maybe Arizona. Do you feel the safeguards are in good shape at this point?
I do. Secretary Raffensperger in Georgia and his deputies, his civil service, are amazing. Secretary Al Schmidt in Pennsylvania he was a local county election official in Philadelphia before he went to become secretary. He's an elections geek. And Secretary Adrian Fontes in Arizona is a lawyer. He was also a county election official. He was a county recorder before. So out west, actually everywhere in the country except for New England, they run their elections by county instead of by municipality. That's why, like on election night, before I got into elections, I was like, why do they do like county, partial county, partial county? It's because they run it all by county with these county voting locations. Anyway, not only do I have a lot of faith in the integrity of these individuals, but again, when you examine the voting laws in other states, I think what's concerning, as former head of the ACLU, what I find most concerning are the limitations on voting rights, right? So there are strict voting ID requirements in other states. There are bizarre voter registration deadlines. We have National Voter Registration Day every year in September. We celebrate it nationwide. It's the last day that you can register to vote anywhere in the country. And I was like, in Maine, every day is voter registration day. You can register to vote on election day and vote. So where we see the problems in elections is really, I think, in voter suppression that's institutionalized into the law, with voter ID, with voter registration deadlines, with election day only voting, with really early hours. There are a lot of states that close the polls basically when people get home from work, and that doesn't seem like a coincidence. And so that's where I have concerns. But in the mechanics of printing ballots, counting ballots, recounting, or audits, there's a lot of similarities around the whole country. And I do, there's a country song, "Most People Are Good." Clearly, we're seeing the worst of the worst in some people, but I do believe that the structures will hold. Like the checks and balances with bipartisan election officials here that we have here in Maine, where you have to have poll workers from both parties. Many other states have that too. So it's not just the Republicans counting the ballots or the Democrats counting the ballots. And nowhere in the country is it like somebody in a back room doing it all by themselves. It's very, very public everywhere. So I do think that the 2024 election, it didn't go the way I would have liked it. Quite frankly, I ruled that Trump shouldn't have been on the ballot, and the Supreme Court overturned me. But I do believe it was safe and secure. And I do believe 2026 will be safe and secure because we will make it so. Because we will not back down to threats, because we will defend the voter rolls, because we will defend the voting systems, and because our decentralized system established in our Constitution that places the states and the local election officials in charge and not the feds. This is why we're going to have safe and secure elections in 2026. But we do need to pay attention. We do need to stay engaged. And above all, we need to not sink into despair or get demoralized. We need to turn out and vote. Sorry.
I think it's me. Secretary Bellows, you're inspiring. Thank you. A lot of Mainers use absentee ballots. It's, 40% or more? Which is fabulous. Well, the post office just made a ruling about when things are going to be postmarked, and I was wondering how that's going to affect it, and how soon should we make sure that our ballots are in, and how to spread that word?
So that's definitely a legal shenanigan. The U.S. Postal Service, it's the management, right? It was Louis DeJoy and his successor, and these new procedures that make it so folks in our communities can't get their medication on time, or don't get their bills, or their notices from the, whatever government agency is trying to contact them. It's really, really terrible. I will say that we have some really good postal workers in our communities that really work hard to make sure that ballots get back to people. But given some of the Byzantine system that they've got, where they're sending stuff from northern Maine down to Scarborough and back up again, or even here in Cumberland County and in York and Oxford, it's really, really brutal in some communities. So that's why I think the absentee ballot drop boxes are so crucial. They were a pandemic innovation. We put them into law in 2021. They're optional to the municipalities. I know Gorham has one, but if you're in a town that doesn't, talk to your clerk. Say, the Secretary of State has free ballot boxes for you, and we'll get you one. And I think that's going to be really crucial. As for the mail, quite frankly, I would again, I probably drop my ballot off at this point, which is sad to say. Or you can request it online, get it at the very beginning of the period, and get it done right away. But it used to be, the reason Maine law has a cutoff on the Thursday prior to Election Day for requesting your absentee ballot, unless it's a extreme circumstances. It used to be if you called the clerk on a Thursday or your request came in on a Thursday, they mailed your ballot to you on a Friday, you get it on Saturday. If you put it in the mail on Monday, it'd get back by Tuesday and it would get counted. And that's why Maine law, going back to 2011, that's why that cutoff is the Thursday night before. Now we tell people don't wait because there's a really good chance it's not going to get there if you're waiting till the last week. So I wish it weren't so, but it is. Do you have an estimate for when you think? I mean, it really depends on the community too, doesn't it? Yeah.
Sorry. We encourage people to use the drop box, and we let people know, if you're mailing it, if we're mailing it to you a week before, you probably should drop it off, and we'll tell them on the phone if they're on the phone or whatnot. But really, the onus is on the voter to know the timing. Like, I don't think it's a secret that mail takes longer than it used to. So really, it's on the voter to make sure that, if it's a week and you haven't mailed your ballot to Election Day, they probably should be dropping it off. It's not based on the postmark date. It's the date received. It has to be received by 8 p.m. on Election Day.
That's just in Maine.
Yeah, that's a Maine law, yes.
Hi. My name is Sue Pastor. I'm 85 years old, and I work at the polls. And and I don't knit. Not anymore. I want you to know that. But my question is, would you guys make sure that we get talking points for the mega law? I really need those for letter writing and my community. Thank you.
Yes, right behind over on that, just
There are
over
talking
there.
points for
There are
it?
talking points over there for our folks.
Thank
So,
you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Please take them.
I'm so proud of Maine.
My name is Marita Weiser. I've been a warden in my town for a number of years. And when you were talking about election safety and threats to election workers, I have to say, since January 6th, I've been aware that apparently there aren't any laws about people carrying firearms into polling places. And I wondered if you had any thoughts about that.
We tried. There was a bill introduced. It's actually been introduced 2 years in a row, and it has not passed. I am hopeful, given that question 2 passed so decisively. It was something that I had supported personally and publicly. I'm hopeful that maybe the next time around we'll get that passed. I will say, I think the argument on the other side, well, there was the Second Amendment argument. Actually, it's hard for me to give the other side's argument. Let me just say, I don't think we should have weapons in polling places, and we have a real differentiation right now because if a polling place is in a school, well, weapons are prohibited in schools, so there won't be weapons there. If a polling place is in a private property where the property owner prohibits weapons, then there won't be weapons there. But if it's in a municipal property that is not a school, then it's possible for someone. Now, they can't brandish. They can't threaten another. They can't interfere with someone else's right to vote. And we have protocols and procedures in place. And I mean, you're a warden, so hopefully that won't happen. But it definitely is a concerning prospect, for sure. Yeah.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for coming and sharing your time with us. It's been very, very welcome. My name is Bob Newton. I live in a small community called Pownell, Maine. It's not very big, but I was the subject of I think a voter suppression effort this last year when I discovered that there was a ballot initiative on the ballot, number 1, that was going to restrict the rights of all people in my town and so forth in a very substantial way and for a long period of time. And so I got out and found placards and put them up and got out the vote that I could in my little town to try to prevent that. There's voter suppression at the voting booth, but there's also voter suppression ahead of the voting booth. Do you folks see any kind of effort coming down the pike here in Maine that we ought to be watching for, such as all of those vote yes signs that automatically appeared within 2 days of all of them going in? Is there anything on the radar that we ought to be looking at for sort of a greater kind of voter suppression or interference? Thank you.
It's a great question. I will say, as of right now, because we are in the second session of the legislature, there are no voter ID bills that folks are trying to get through. Now, don't think that they haven't tried to push a voter ID bill through every single session since, I don't know, the last 10 to 12 years. There is no longer a current threat of, I think there was one for taking away same-day voter registration, had been on the ballot, or had been up and introduced into the legislature. Those have all been defeated. We are not seeing any through the Maine legislature right now that would be kind of in that space. We really have been able to, I think, the decisive vote at the ballot box this year on question 1 also just really gave a clear message to folks that same-day voter registration, being able to vote securely from your home, were real things that folks cherished and were a part of their system. So we haven't seen any more of those, at least right now, coming up. So.
Hi, I'm from Yarmouth. And you mentioned earlier that ballots are destroyed after how many months? 22, okay. If the election doesn't go the way some people want it to go, what's to say that they won't be in the next week to confiscate all that? How do you prevent that possibility?
So I do think Fulton County sends a warning signal in terms of local and state control of the ballots. And what I think is and I think this is part of a conversation secretaries are having across the country, and election officials certainly are too. I think there are 3 things that are really important. One is the law. So in Maine, as chief election official, it is the ballots are in the custody of the municipality or in the custody of the Secretary of State. And there is no authorization, absent my authorization, for release of those ballots to anyone, absent a court order, but that has to come through me. And I'm going to fight that with every breath that I have. And I think, one of the things that was concerning about Fulton County is just puzzling that with that search warrant, I think based on what we're reading about it, it was improper. It wasn't grounded in probable cause. It was grounded in the conspiracy theories going back that have been disproven in court already. So I think chain of custody is a protection, the chain of command, that for ballots to be released, it would have to come through the Secretary of State's office, and trust me, we're not backing down. And also the physical barriers, right? Ballots are kept under lock and key. They're kept in secure facilities. Very few people have access to those secure facilities. So those can't be bypassed without some knowledge and that ability to go in and challenge that. And then lastly, remember the ballots in Maine and really everywhere across the country, they get counted on election night and they get counted in full view. Any of you can go watch the count. You just have to sign up to be an observer with your clerk ahead of time. And so there are a lot of eyes on those ballots during that count on election night. So that creates a shared reality. And the results get posted in the polling place on election night. And so I think that certainly, I'm not going to say that it's an unfounded concern that we have to think about how we safeguard our ballots. We do have to think about how we safeguard our ballots, our ballot materials, our equipment from federal interference. And we will.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Rosie. I'm from Wyndham. And thank you so much, the 3 of you. I'm just curious, whatever happened with that that set of ballots that got delivered by the Amazon truck, has that been solved?
So the investigation is ongoing, and we turned it over to the Office of the Attorney General. And so the Office of the Attorney General has the most current updates on the investigation. UPS gave comments to the paper, I think it was last week, saying that it was an accident, that it was accidental employee error. I will say that the newspaper article also reported on internal documents that we released in a FOIA. And so I will just share publicly now what I had said in private, and that is UPS is not satisfied my concerns about their chain of custody protections, because ballots in Maine are printed by a Maine printer, and they are sealed at the printer with security measures on those boxes, and then they were shipped through either the Postal Service or UPS to their destination. And when clerks get the ballots, they have to sign for them, and they have to sign that they received the number of ballots that they were expecting. So when the Ellsworth clerk received a damaged box and ballots were missing, that clerk immediately called my office to say, I can't sign for the ballots because I'm missing 50 ballots, or 250 ballots rather. And then the Newburgh clerk called us the next morning to say a constituent has brought us 250 ballots that were in an Amazon box. Now that should never happen. The printer is packaging those ballots specific to specific municipalities in specific packaging on site and putting them securely under camera to UPS. So they were in custody of UPS when something happened. And I think that it is a travesty that UPS has, in fact, somehow interrupted their chain of custody protections. So that's why we used a different delivery service. We have absentee ballots, and we have election day ballots. And this was a disruption of the absentee ballot. So for election day, we used a different delivery service. We used a medical delivery service called Vital Delivery. It was more costly, but it was more secure, and that's what we'll be using in the future. So, yeah. The good news is, even if somebody had intercepted those ballots, remember, you can't vote a ballot without the absentee ballot envelope, and you have to sign the absentee ballot envelope and seal it, and that has to correspond to an absentee ballot request that has been properly made to your clerk. So even if those ballots had gone astray and been intercepted somehow by someone trying to vote those ballots, they would not have been successful in voting those ballots. And you can't show up on election day and just vote a ballot without having your name checked off the voter list. And right, you can't put extras in the ballot drop box, because every ballot must correspond to a valid absentee ballot envelope. The clerks actually put the information of the person that's receiving the absentee ballot on that envelope. In my town, it's a sticker. And you have to, you can't just put your absentee ballot in a random envelope. It won't be accepted unless it's in that official envelope and it's signed and sealed. So there are lots of safeguards in the process that made us confident the election was safe and secure. Unfortunately, the Maine voters thought so too. But that was really, really, I'm still very angry about it.
Hi, I'm Leslie from Gray. And there's been a lot in the news about purging of the rolls. And I was wondering if there was, if we need to worry about any of that. And if so, how do we go about making sure that our name is still valid in the voting rolls?
The good news in Maine is we have same-day voter registration. So if your name got inadvertently removed from the list and you showed up on election day, you would still be able to vote. Even if you left your wallet at home, you could sign an affidavit and vote what's called a challenge ballot, and it would still count. It would just get a little mark. But you can vote. Okay. You can register to vote on election day if your name is not on the rolls. But what we do is voter list maintenance. So the Secretary of State's office routinely is monitoring vital records and receiving vital records reports when people are deceased, or we exchange data with other states. So if we get data that shows that someone has moved to Florida, for example, we might then remove them based on understanding that they've changed their residence or that they're deceased. We also do something called a National Voter Registration Act, an NVRA mailing. And this is something I'm really proud of. As secretary, in my first term, we did a statewide mailing to everyone who had not voted in the previous 2 elections, in 2020 or 2018, because we suspected that we had a lot of folks who may have moved out of state, especially students. We suspected that there were a lot of names on the rolls from people that no longer lived in Maine. We were right. We sent out over 200,000 postcards. We then, however, under the law, we wait 2 more federal elections. We waited for 2024. I'm getting my dates wrong. No, 2018, 2020, they didn't vote. We sent out the postcard in 2021. We then waited for the 2022 election and the 2024 election. If they had voted, great, no harm, no foul. But all of the people that didn't vote in those subsequent 2 elections, so that's 4 elections, 2 presidentials and 2 gubernatorials that they haven't voted in, then those folks got canceled from the rolls. So we did cancel almost 200,000 folks about a year ago. We just did another postcard, and this time around there are about 184,000. I think that's because, again, when you look at the pandemic, that we had huge numbers, and then folks went back to their states that they came from. And also because we do have a lot of student voters, which we love. So folks did just get a postcard. And if you're a voter and you get the postcard, you can be like, hey, I'm here. Call Patty, or call us. Or if you get the postcard and it's addressed to someone who lived in your house and no longer lives there, you can get it to them so that they can tell us that they no longer live there, and we can remove them from the
So it
rolls.
sounds like we don't have to worry about that.
You don't have to worry. Sorry, that was a
Thank you.
long-winded answer for don't worry about it. You know where it matters is in states where they have a voter registration deadline. If you're the deadline to register to vote is September 15th, and then you show up on election day and you're not on the rolls, that's a real challenge. That's voter suppression, and that does happen.
Okay, thanks. This has been wonderful. And my name is Jill, and I'm on the subcommittee of Indivisible Cumberland County on election integrity. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, this sounds good. We don't need to do anything. So I know I'm kind of, I'm Pollyanna-ing this, but could you give us a summary, real succinct, but what we can do as individuals, as an organization? In 2 minutes or less.
Go down the road. Okay, so my 3 things are encourage friends and family to vote, make 2026 the best year ever for voter turnout. That's the number 1 thing that you can do. Okay?
Oh, wait, you said 3 things.
3 things. It's clearly late. I think raise your voices on policy, right? Beth gave you some federal policies that are bad, some state policies that are good. Legislators, members of Congress, senators could use your backbone to give them backbone. And then the third piece is use trusted sources of information, right? So there's a lot of conspiracies floating around, right? You see it on Facebook or Instagram. So really going to trusted sources of information and talking to your friends and neighbors about your confidence in elections, how Maine elections are safe and secure, and help make our work a little bit easier by talking to friends and family. I guess I have a 4th. They should volunteer for you, right?
I'll let you take that one at the end. But because Patty's going to tell you that you should all come and work as election poll workers, I'm going to tell you one thing you can do today. You can walk out of here, go home, whatever. You can register. You can enroll in the ongoing absentee ballot program right now. As of right now, every citizen in Maine, registered voter, is eligible for ongoing absentee voting. That means that you can not have to do it every year, but that you can register now to have your ballot mailed to you, which means you'll get it for primary. You will get, because you're going to be busy on election day volunteering and working as a poll worker. And then you will automatically get your November ballot, which is good because you will also be volunteering and working as a poll worker. So please make sure you get those now.
Thank you. You both stole my thunder, but I would say that, you've all heard a lot tonight and probably learned a few things. Spread that in the community. I think when you hear someone kind of, speaking badly or questioning the integrity of the elections, just say, oh, geez, I just went to this event and I heard X, Y, Z, and, I really have confidence. Maybe you should do some research with the Secretary of State's office or your local clerk. I appreciate the fact that there are organizations that do a lot for elections, but I would encourage you to tell people to go directly to the source. If they're questioning something about a local election, go to the local clerk. Don't go to vote.org or whatever, because I don't know how up-to-date their information is, and I can't speak to what they have on their website, but I can sure tell you what's on my website. So I would encourage that. If you don't want to be a poll worker, maybe be an observer, you can spread the good word that way. I will say that whenever I hear people speaking badly about elections or questioning the integrity, I invite them to come be a poll worker and hear the training. They are blown away after they attend a 3-hour training, which I hold before each election, explaining all the things that we do and how we do them and how we're following the rules and kind of the challenges that we're worried about, bomb threats, this, that, and the other thing. If someone, pulls a fire alarm, this is what we do. And they sit there and they go, oh my gosh, I'm kind of almost sorry I signed up for this. I'm like, no, we're going to be fine, but I am obligated to try to keep everyone safe, the workers, the voters. I take that very seriously. But spreading the good word, once those people go through that training, they go out in the community and say, wow, what a good job we're doing and that we're following all the rules, even the dumb ones. So.
Another question?
I do.
Okay, please.
Thank you. Thank you for all the information you've given us and being here tonight. Most people can tell from my hat that I have sworn to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. I'll frame this in the form of a question. I think you'll all agree with me, but the question is, do you think we should really stop all the complacency, get everybody to vote? We should stop all the complicity, agreeing with all the evil things that are going on in our country right now, and stop the capitulation to somebody who's taken that oath and is not obeying it. Thank you.
I think this is so incredibly important because we do want to reassure you about the strength of our elections in Maine, the strength of our commitment, the civil society strength, the clerk's strength, the secretary's and my office's strength. But make no mistake, we are in a dangerous moment for our democracy. Right? And what is being said at the federal level is unprecedented. It is not normal for a White House to talk about sending masked armed men into polling places. It is not normal to have the ICE to have what's happening in Minnesota on the street happening right now with the murder of 2 American citizens. And it is very dangerous to have the Director of National Intelligence touching ballots, seizing equipment in Puerto Rico, and spinning up conspiracies. So thank you. And I think it's an odd position that we are in as election officials, or that I am in as your secretary. I want to reassure you, the election in 2026 will be safe and secure because we will make it so, right? We will prevail. But I don't want to say that we're not in a dangerous moment for our democracy, because the rhetoric and the actions of the federal government are unprecedented and, in my view, completely unconstitutional. So thank you so much for coming out tonight for what could be a less exciting panel than a very exciting panel. No, no, but this matters, right? I mean, there are a lot of things you could be doing this evening, but this really matters, and we are so grateful for your service, sir, to our country in the military, but so grateful to all of you for everything you are doing to stand up and to speak out and to knock back down as citizens of our democracy.
You have another question?
Hi, I'm Erica from Portland. This has been super enlightening. Thank you. I'm just kind of looking at the crowd, and you can see kind of what ages we're representing here, and I feel like we're right next to a university. We don't see a lot of young people here tonight. As a parent of a young adult, this does matter, and I even had a hard time getting myself over here, and so I'm kind of wondering, what kind of messaging can we give to young adults to get them to see how much this matters so that they actually do go to the polls? Because I have a 19-year-old, she registered at our voting site on the day of, when she had her postcard totally ready, and she got some praise for how prepared she was. But a lot of the peers did not vote. So what are some of the messages that we can give to young adults?
I am also a parent of a young adult and thinking in that same space. And we were having a conversation with a fantastic one of the organizations that's part of the Mainers for Modern Elections is Maine Youth Power. Fantastic organization working with youth and trying to do, engage civic engagement and engage in the elections. And, they made this point the other day that, Beth, every election has been the election for this group of young people who have come into elections in the last 6 to 8 years. Every one of them is unprecedented. Every one of them. It's hard. And one of the things that I heard really from them was bringing it back to issues. I don't think that young folks are not, wanting to be engaged. That is not what I'm hearing when I talk with Maine Youth Power. That is not what I'm hearing from them. They're really engaged around some of they have passion issues for themselves, and helping them make the connection between how their desire for clean air and clean water and justice and social justice, how that connects back to their, they're casting their ballot. And that's been the place where we've seen folks really engage there. It's been bringing it back into that bigger place.
As I said earlier, I have a hard time saying no, so I end up speaking to basically anyone that will listen. Last year, I got invited to Waterville High School through the NHS lady, and she goes, "Can you come speak to the students?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. What time, what day, whatever." So I show up, with my little heels and walk in, and the principal's there, and he goes, "Oh, are you Patty? I'm so-and-so principal." I'm like, "Oh, nice to meet you." And he goes, "Yeah, we're going to be releasing the students into the auditorium soon." And I'm like, "Really?" I said, "Well, how many students are they going to be?" He goes, "Oh, the whole student body. I don't know, 500 or whatever." I said, "Oh, okay. Well, I didn't prepare anything, but that's okay. I can talk." And so I talked to the entire student body and all the staff. And the staff asked a ton of questions. It was before a primary election, which is also always a very confusing election for folks. They don't understand enrollment and changing parties and how it all works. And so I spoke for, an hour and a half to this group of people. The kids were asking great questions. The staff were asking great questions. It was just a really engaging opportunity, and I think it's powerful that those kids are now kind of interested, talk about voter reg, how easy it is, get involved. If you want to work, come work for me, I'll pay you. You'll get some training, I'll give you a certificate, you can use it for community service, whatever, I'm happy to have you. And I get them involved, and once, like I said, once you snag them, you've got them for life.
right? They'll come back. They'll come back and vote. They'll come back and volunteer, but you've got to get them young, right? If we see a lot of people that are registering to vote that are, in their 50s and they've never voted before. And it's shocking to me, but we try to say, "Oh, I'm so proud of you. Good for you. Come on in. I'll help you. It's easy. Don't worry about it. I'll guide you through it," and you make them feel better. So getting people involved early and working with your local schools, I think, is super important. And anyone that asks me to speak, I can't say no. I will go.
My name is Jay Lake. I'm the proud grandparent of a senior at Colby. Following up on the question about getting young people to vote, well, first we need to get them to register. And it is clear that the Trump administration, the Department of Education, is going to try to suppress voter registration at colleges. How successful do you think that effort is going to be? What can we do to work against it?
We now have online voter registration. So in my first term with the advocates, we passed automatic voter registration at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. So when a kid gets their license at age 16, under Maine law, they get pre-registered automatically. And in 2024, I implemented online voter registration. So now when we go to campuses, and I was at Colby, they have a taco truck when they do voter registration day. They have a QR code, and students can just scan it with their phone and automatically register to vote. Or they can do it from their dorm room. So they don't even have to fill out a card, and it doesn't go to the feds. It comes through my office and then to the clerks. So my answer is, not on our watch. Like, we are going to defend students' right to vote. And it really is about turnout, and this is what Beth's group does, and it's about education. So if Patty's booked, I have a youth engagement coordinator who does great work. We go out into schools also all across Maine to get people fired up. We've been to Colby now 2 years in a row to get Colby students engaged in voting in Maine elections. So. Well, this has been terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I would like to thank the panel. Thank you for your expertise, your passion, and your backbone. Okay. Thank you all very much. Well, really quickly, in terms of announcements, for individual Cumberland County, we have the No Kings coming up on March 28th. We have a civil disobedience workshop that's coming up on the 17th. Is there any others that I'm missing? Come on, here you go. Come on.
Okay, like I said, I'm Jill. I'm on the ICC Election Integrity Committee, and we're meeting to think about how to carry out some of the ideas, strategies that were recommended to us, and we'll be meeting on Zoom. If you want to be a part of that, come sign up. I'm going to stand right down here, right up front with the sign-up list. All right?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and please get home safe.